How about Omar screaming like a lunatic? You looked at their bulging eyes.
She's crazy.
Get her the hell out of here. The alien Omar lady. Why don't you just get out the Democratic Party? Honestly, start your own movement, and left to her devices, she will lead the Democrats down the road to political destruction. Something is breaking apart inside the Democratic Party as Ilhan Omar crashes down with her own party, now done with her. After multiple controversies like her explosive outbursts at the State of the Union, her own colleagues are now calling for her removal and even Trump is rallying for her deportation. With every scandal and furious outburst, Omar is humiliating her own party, fueling anger and frustration, and making it crystal clear that her political career may soon be over. That is why I'm also asking you to own deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country. They're blocking the removal of these people out of our country. During President Trump's State of the Union address, while millions of Americans were watching, Ilhan Omar stood up in the chamber and screamed, "You're a disgrace and you're a murderer." Directed at the sitting President of the United States during a nationally televised address in front, music of Congress and the American people. That is not dissent. That is meltdown. And it aired live on every major network in the country. Its itch has an unusual amount and kind of fanger. She has no music, right to that level of rage in the United States of America. The country who gave her corrupt ass a new life. It's not like she's a homeless Vietnam vet who can't get music services and should been raged at the government. She should be kissing the ground she walks on instead of spitting on it. Now, you can agree or disagree with Trump on every single policy he has ever touched. That is your right as an American. But there is reason why even senior Democrats were music, tight-lipped, and uncomfortable after that moment. Because they know what it looked like. It looked unhinged, and it looked like exactly the kind of footage that gets turned into a campaign ad by every Republican running in a competitive district. Omar handed them that clip for free. Any regrets at all about the interaction we played between you, music, and President Trump just last night? I do not. Trump did not let it go. He called her out immediately, labeled her a crooked and corrupt politician, and the clip went viral within hours. Love Trump or hate him, he knows how to weaponize a moment, and Omar gave him the perfect one. But here is where it gets more dangerous for the Democratic Party. This is not just a one-time outburst. This is a pattern, and members of her own party are now saying it out loud. And as you know, Miss Omar needs more help than pretty much anybody. In a furious closing rant, he then says that if they have any guts at all, it's time for Lady Omar and her radical pals to get the heck out of his beloved Democratic Party and start up a political party of their own, adding that down the road, music, they'd be free to caucus with Democrats whenever the dust eventually settles. James Carville, not a Republican, not a Trump supporter, but one of the most battle-hardened Democratic music strategists alive, went on record and called Omar a festering music wound inside the party. Those are his words, a festering wound. He did not say she was controversial. He did not say she needed better messaging. Music, he said she was rotting the party from the inside, and then he went further. He suggested she should leave the Democratic Party entirely and start her own. Think about what that means. A man who spent decades building the Democratic coalition is now saying one of their sitting congresswomen has no place in it. It also reminds me of the radical who, given power, would destroy you. She would show no mercy for you if you were below her. Like the look on her face is somebody who would step on your neck instead of giving you a hand. And that is not the kind of person we should have in our leadership. It's not the type of person we should have in this country. Omar's rhetoric on immigration, national identity, and law enforcement does not play in the swing districts Democrats desperately need to win elections. Her comments about white men being responsible for most deaths in the country, her rejection of anything resembling an America First framework, her repeated calls to abolish ICE, none of that resonates with suburban moderate voters who actually decide elections. Most senior Democrats know this. The problem is that nobody wanted to say it out loud until now. That's silence ice over. Over the weekend, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessing calling out Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar for her response about the allegations of widespread fraud from the state's Somali community, the largest in the nation and potential link to terrorist organizations. Representative Omar tried to downplay it to said, "Oh, it was very it was very tough to know how this money should be used." She was gaslighting the American people. Here is another angle nobody is talking about enough: fundraising. The Democratic Party runs on donor money, and major donors, the institutional kind, the ones writing 6- and 7-figure checks, are quietly pulling back from candidates associated with the hard left. When a congresswoman becomes a liability rather than a draw, the money follows, and Omar's brand has become so toxic in centrist donor circles that her presence seeing the party's public face is actively hurting fundraising efforts in competitive states. Democrats trying to flip Senate seats and win back governorships do not want Omar's face anywhere near their campaign literature. That is a financial problem, not just a messaging one. Joining me now is Congressman Randy Fine, who is now actively considering our solution to expel Ilhan Omar from Congress. A congressman, meanwhile, Representative Randy Fine and others have gone even further, joining calls alongside Trump to question whether Omar should even remain in the country. Those calls are legally baseless. But the fact that this conversation is happening at all and gaining traction in mainstream political spaces tells you exactly how radioactive her image has become. Ilhan Omar is a walking example of everything that is wrong with our legal immigration policy. We imported tens of thousands of people who hate America, add no value to it, rob and steal from us. And we're supposed to be okay with it. I don't think Ilhan Omar should be expelled from Congress. I think she should be expelled from the United States. And that's something. And then there is the Minnesota corruption angle, which the media has largely buried, but which follows Omar like a shadow. Her district was at the center of one of the largest pandemic relief fraud schemes in American history. Stolen funds routed through fake feeding programs, money that was supposed to feed children during a crisis, vanished into a criminal network. Somali community members were charged and convicted. Omar was not charged with any crime. But the association is politically devastating. Music critics have directly connected her open borders advocacy and sanctuary city positions to the perception that her district operates under a different set of rules than the rest of the country. Fair or unfair, that narrative has legs, and it is not going away. Have built $18 billion since 2018, and at least half or more is fraudulent. This is so widespread. Thesis so endemic, and you were talking autistic kids that maybe weren't getting the money they needed. Now add this layer, congressional effectiveness. Look at what Ilhan Omar has actually passed into law during her time in Congress. The answer is almost nothing of substance. She has been loud. She has been viral. She has been on every cable news panel and podcast. But when it comes to delivering actual legislative results for her constituents in Minneapolis, real policy, real funding, real change, her record is thin. And Democrats who care about governing, not just performing, have started noticing. You cannot represent a district with real poverty, real crime, and real infrastructure problems and spend all your time yelling at presidents on national television. At some point, your own voters start asking what you have actually done for them. Meanwhile, Omar pushing back, saying any connection between alleged Somali fraud and terrorism would fall on the FBI. If there was a linkage in that the money that they had stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI. Her response to the growing backlash has been revealing in another way too. On social media. She has started disabling comments on her most controversial posts. When a politician turns off the ability for people to respond to them publicly, that is a tell. It means the reaction is bad enough that they cannot afford to let it be visible. The feedback loop has turned toxic. Omar knows her base is passionate, but she also knows the broader public reaction is increasingly negative. Silencing the comment section does not change that reality. It just confirms she knows it exists. Are from Minnesota's Somali community. This also has an impact on a Somali because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota. The media has played its own role in shaping every explosive moment. Every clip of her refusing to stand during a patriotic moment. Every outburst, every incendiary statement, gets clipped, shared, and reshared across every platform. Her critics do not even need to build a narrative. Music, she builds it for them. And her supporters, however loud they are online, are a sliver of the actual electorate. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller said on Friday the Somali fraud will pro veto be the greatest theft of taxpayer, music dollar tolerance through welfare in U.S. history, and he says we have only begun to scratch the surface of music, how bad it is. The deeper issue is what Omar represents inside the Democratic coalition. Music, she is the face of the progressive hard left alongside squad colleague Rashida Tlaib. Together they have pulled the party's public image further left than most of its actual voters are. Abolish ICE, open borders, defund the police, anti-Israel rhetoric that alienates Jewish voters who have been loyal Democrats for generations. These are positions that fire up a narrow base and drive away everyone else. And moderate Democrats, the ones representing purple districts, the ones who actually have to win competitive races, are done pretending they are comfortable with it. Their plan is to buy these people off by giving them taxpayer money to destroy the country, by bringing in people who hate us. These Somali have been here for decades. Yet 80% of them are on welfare. The quiet whisper campaign happening in Democratic backrooms right now is getting louder every week. Members are privately questioning her electability, her judgment, and her impact on the party's brand in competitive districts. They are not saying it on camera yet, but Carville said it on camera. And when Carville says it, others eventually follow with a microphone in front of them. What you are watching in real time is a slow political execution. The Democratic Party is not going to hold a press conference and denounce Ilhan Omar. That is not how Washington works. What they will do is withdraw support, quietly redirect donor money, allow primary challengers to gain ground, and let the distance grow organically until she is completely isolated. Music. The 2026 cycle will be the test, and the early signs are not good for her. Then you wonder why I am not going to ever in my life or afterlife or reincarnated life vote for you ever again. You pitiful Democrat. The State of the Union outburst was not just an embarrassing moment. It was a turning point. It crystallized every concern that moderate Democrats have carried about Omar for years. Lack of discipline, inflammatory rhetoric, the inability to read a room or understand that governing requires more than outrage.